Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about something that has the power to completely transform our lives, putting God first. We live in a world full of distractions, pressures, and responsibilities. It's easy to get caught up in daily struggles, worrying about our jobs, families, finances, and future. But there is one thing that can bring true peace, clarity, and strength, making God our first priority. One, God as our foundation. Imagine trying to build a house on sand. It won't last long when storms come. The same is true for our lives. When we put God first, we build on a strong foundation that keeps us steady no matter what life throws our way. The Bible says, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. When we trust Him, He provides everything we need. Two, divine order brings peace. Have you ever noticed that life feels out of balance when God is not at the center? Worry, anxiety, and stress take over. But when we align our priorities with Him, everything begins to fall into place. It doesn't mean we won't have challenges, but we will have peace in the midst of them. God is not an afterthought. He is the answer. Three, trusting God unlocks blessings. Many of us try to control our own lives, thinking we know what's best. But God's plans are always greater than our own. When we surrender to Him, we open the door to blessings, opportunities, and breakthroughs that we could never achieve on our own. When we give Him our first and best, He multiplies it in ways beyond our imagination. Four-door faith over fear. Life is uncertain, but God is unchanging. When we put Him first, we replace fear with faith. No matter what challenges we face, we can stand strong, knowing that He is in control. We don't have to be afraid of the future because we know the one who holds it. So today I encourage you, put God first in everything, in your time, in your decisions, in your relationships, and in your dreams. When you make Him your priority, everything else will fall into place. Thank you and God bless. Just like a house needs a strong foundation to stand firm against storms, our lives need a firm foundation to withstand the challenges, uncertainties, and trials we inevitably face. The truth is, if our foundation is weak, everything we build upon it will be at risk of collapsing when difficulties arise. This is why putting God first is so essential, because He is the only foundation strong enough to sustain us through anything life throws our way. When we prioritize God, we are not just making Him a part of our lives, we are building our entire existence around Him. He becomes the source of our strength, wisdom, and stability. Without Him as our foundation, we may find temporary satisfaction in worldly things, success, relationships, wealth, but when hardships come, these things cannot provide the support and security we need. They are like shifting sand, unstable and unreliable. There are times in life when we feel overwhelmed, lost, or unsure of which path to take. We look for answers in different places, self-help books, social media, the opinions of others, but these sources can only provide temporary relief, not true guidance or peace. However, when we put God first and make Him our foundation, we don't have to rely on unstable things for security. We can stand firm knowing that He never changes, His promises never fail, and His love never wavers. Think about how people invest so much time and effort in building a successful career, maintaining a perfect image, or securing financial stability. While none of these things are bad, they become unstable foundations when they take priority over God. If our identity is built on achievements, what happens when we experience failure? If our security is in money, what happens when financial troubles arise? If our happiness is based on relationships, what happens when people disappoint us? The reality is that everything in this world is temporary, but God remains constant. That is why He should be the foundation upon which we build our lives. Putting God first does not mean ignoring responsibilities or neglecting goals. It simply means making Him the center of everything we do. It means seeking His guidance before making decisions, trusting His plan over our own, and aligning our desires with His will. When we do this, we begin to experience peace, clarity, and direction in ways we never could on our own. We no longer feel the pressure to figure everything out by ourselves because we know that our lives are in the hands of a faithful God who sees the bigger picture. A strong foundation in God also gives us the strength to endure hardships. Life is full of trials, disappointments, setbacks, heartbreak, and loss. Without a solid foundation, these challenges can shake us to our core, leaving us feeling hopeless and defeated. But when God is our foundation, we can face difficulties with courage and resilience. We may not always understand why certain things happen, but we can trust that God is in control and that He is working all things together for our good. There is a sense of security that comes with putting God first. It means we are not dependent on our own abilities or the stability of our circumstances. Instead, we are anchored in something far greater, an unshakable, all-powerful, ever-loving God. This kind of foundation allows us to navigate life with confidence, knowing that no matter what happens, we are not alone. God desires to be the foundation of our lives because He knows that is the only way we can experience true peace, joy, and fulfillment. When we put Him first, everything else falls into place. It doesn't mean life will be free from difficulties, but it does mean that we will never have to face them alone. We will have His wisdom guiding us, His strength sustaining us, and His love surrounding us every step of the way. So today, ask yourself, what is your foundation built on? Are you relying on temporary things to bring you security and fulfillment? Or are you making God the foundation of your life? The answer to this question will determine how you handle the storms of life. When we build our lives on God, we can stand firm, unshaken, and victorious no matter what comes our way. We spend so much of our lives trying to figure things out. We analyze, plan, and stress over every detail, believing that if we just think hard enough, prepare well enough, and work long enough, we can control the outcome. But deep down, we know this isn't true. Life is unpredictable. No matter how much we try to manage, there are always things we can't see, can't predict, and can't change. And that's where trust in God becomes so crucial, because while we may not know what's ahead, He does. God sees the full picture while we only see a small fragment. Imagine walking through a dense forest with no map, just wandering from one path to another, trying to figure out which way leads home. That's how life feels when we try to navigate it on our own. But God, He sees everything from above. He knows exactly where each road leads, where the dangers are, and which path will bring us the greatest joy and fulfillment. Yet so often, instead of trusting His guidance, we insist on making our own way, even when it leads us into confusion and trouble. It's hard to let go of control. We like to believe we're capable, that we know what's best for our lives. But if we're honest, how many times have we made decisions that led us to stress, regret, or pain? How many times have we prayed for something, believing it was exactly what we needed, only to later realize it would have been the worst thing for us? That's because our knowledge is limited. We see what's right in front of us, but God sees what's ahead. He sees not just where we are, but where we're going, and He knows exactly what we need to get there. Think about a child asking their parent for something they don't understand. A toddler might cry for candy before dinner, completely unaware that eating too much sugar will make them sick. A teenager might beg to stay out late, not realizing the dangers that could come with it. A loving parent says no, not because they want to withhold something good, but because they understand what the child doesn't. That's how God is with us. He doesn't deny us things to be cruel or to hold us back. He does it because He sees what we don't see. He knows what we don't know. We've all had moments where we question God's plan. Maybe He closed a door we desperately wanted to walk through. Maybe He took something away that we thought we needed. In those moments, it's easy to feel frustrated, disappointed, even hurt. But time and time again, we look back and realize He was protecting us. He was redirecting us towards something better, something we couldn't see at the time. There's a peace that comes when we truly accept that God knows more than we do. We no longer have to live in constant anxiety, trying to predict the future or control the outcome. We don't have to exhaust ourselves making sure every little thing goes exactly as planned. Instead, we can rest in the truth that He is in control and He is always working for our good. It's not always easy to trust. Sometimes we want proof before we surrender. We want to see exactly how things will turn out before we let go. But faith doesn't work that way. Faith is trusting even when we don't understand. Faith is believing that even when things don't make sense, God is still good and He is still in control. Look at the people in the Bible who trusted God despite not knowing the outcome. Abraham was told to leave his home and go to an unknown land. He had no map, no clear plan, just a promise from God. And because he trusted, he walked into blessings beyond what he could have imagined. Joseph was thrown into a pit by his brothers, sold into slavery, and imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. At any point, he could have questioned why God was allowing it, but in the end, he saw that every hardship led him to a position where he could save countless lives. The disciples left everything to follow Jesus, having no idea where the journey would take them. But they trusted, and because they did, they witnessed miracles and became part of God's greatest plan. Our lives are no different. There are moments when God asks us to trust Him without knowing all the details. Moments when things don't go our way and we're tempted to believe He has forgotten us. But the truth is, He is always working, even when we can't see it. He is always leading us, even when the path feels unclear. One of the greatest decisions we can make is to stop trying to figure everything out on our own and start trusting the one who already has it figured out. Instead of stressing over every decision, we can seek His wisdom and trust that He will guide. Instead of living in fear of the unknown, we can have confidence that He is already in our future preparing the way. What are you holding on to today that you need to release? What situation have you been trying to control instead of trusting God with? Because whatever it is, He sees the bigger picture. He knows what's best. And if you'll just trust Him, you'll find that His way is always better than anything you could have planned on your own. We all have areas in our lives where we struggle to change. Maybe it's a habit we can't break, a fear that keeps holding us back, or a mindset that keeps us stuck. We try to fix it. We try to do better. We make promises to ourselves only to find ourselves in the same place over and over again. Why? Because real change isn't something we can achieve on our own. It happens when we stop striving and start surrendering. God never intended for us to change ourselves by sheer willpower. He wants to transform us from the inside out. That's the difference between self-help and surrender. Self-help says, try harder, do more, fix yourself. Surrender says, let God do the work in you. And when we finally let go of the pressure to change ourselves, that's when true transformation begins. Maybe you've spent years struggling with the same issues, feeling frustrated and defeated because no matter what you do, you just can't seem to overcome them. You wonder, why do I keep making the same mistakes? Why do I keep falling back into the same patterns? The reason is simple. We weren't designed to change ourselves. We need God's power to truly transform. Think about a seed. You can't force it to grow by yelling at it or pulling on it. The only way it grows is when it's planted in the right soil, gets the right amount of water, and receives sunlight. In the same way, transformation happens when we place ourselves in God's hands, allow His truth to nourish us, and let His Spirit do the work in us. The process may not always be quick, and it may not always be easy, but in time, the change will come. One of the biggest struggles we face is trying to hold on to control while asking God to transform us. We want Him to change us, but we also want to do things our own way. We say, God, I trust you, but then we go right back to the same habits, the same thoughts, and the same choices. True transformation requires letting go. It requires saying, God, I surrender. I give you permission to shape me, to mold me, to take away what's not of you and replace it with something better. But surrender isn't always comfortable. Sometimes God asks us to release things we're not ready to let go of. Maybe it's a toxic relationship, a negative mindset, or a habit that feels good in the moment but keeps us trapped in the long run. Surrender means trusting that when God removes something from our lives, He's making room for something better. One of the most powerful examples of transformation in the Bible is Paul. He went from being someone who persecuted Christians to one of the greatest apostles who ever lived. But that transformation didn't happen because Paul simply decided to change one day. It happened because he had an encounter with Jesus. It happened because he surrendered his old ways and allowed God to make him new. And if God could do that for Paul, he can do it for you. Maybe you feel like change is impossible. Maybe you've tried so many times and failed that you've started to believe you'll never be different. But let me remind you, God is in the business of transformation. He doesn't just improve people, he completely renews them. He doesn't just fix the surface, he changes the heart. And when God starts a work in you, he is faithful to complete it. The reason transformation is so hard sometimes is that we focus too much on the external. We try to modify our behavior without addressing what's really going on inside. But God works differently. He doesn't just deal with the fruit, he deals with the root. He gets to the core of the issue. Maybe you struggle with anger, but the real issue is deep pain you haven't dealt with. Maybe you battle insecurity, but the real problem is a lack of trust in God's love for you. Maybe you keep falling into the same bad habits, but the real issue is that you're looking for comfort in the wrong places. God wants to heal us at the deepest level. He wants to transform the way we think, the way we see ourselves, and the way we respond to life. But that can only happen if we're willing to let him do the work. We have to surrender our need to control the process and trust that even when we don't see immediate results, he is working behind the scenes. Change isn't about perfection, it's about progress. It's about waking up each day and saying, God, I may not be where I want to be yet, but I trust that you're taking me there. It's about being patient with the process and knowing that even the smallest steps of faith are leading us toward the person God created us to be. So what are you holding on to that's keeping you from true transformation? What fear, what habit, what mindset have you been clinging to instead of surrendering to God? Because whatever it is, God is ready to take it and replace it with something greater. All he needs is your yes. Transformation isn't about trying harder. It's about trusting deeper. It's about realizing that the power to change doesn't come from within us. It comes from God. And when we surrender, we don't just become better versions of ourselves, we become completely new. We all go through struggles. Life is filled with unexpected challenges, heartbreak, disappointments, and seasons of waiting that test our patience and faith. In those moments, it's easy to wonder where God is, why things aren't changing, and why our prayers seem unanswered. But the truth is, when we surrender to God, we aren't just giving him control, we're giving him permission to work everything out for our good. Surrender isn't about sitting back and doing nothing. It's about trusting that even when we don't understand, God is still in control and working behind the scenes in ways we can't see. So often we think surrender means losing something. We think it means giving up our dreams, sacrificing our desires, or settling for less. But surrender isn't about losing, it's about gaining. It's about stepping into something far greater than what we could ever achieve on our own. It's about exchanging our limited plans for God's perfect will. And when we truly surrender, we realize that what we were holding on to so tightly was nothing compared to what he had in store for us all along. Have you ever been in a situation where you tried to force something to happen? Maybe it was a job you desperately wanted, a relationship you held on to even when it wasn't right, or a plan that you were determined to make work. You prayed, you worked hard, you did everything in your power, but no matter what you did, things just wouldn't come together. And then at some point, you finally let go. You stopped striving. You said, God, I give this to you. And suddenly things started to shift. Maybe not in the way you expected, but in a way that was ultimately better. That's the power of surrender. When we surrender, we stop fighting battles that weren't meant for us to fight. We stop exhausting ourselves trying to figure everything out. We stop worrying about what's next because we know that God already has it covered. And the peace that comes from that kind of trust is priceless. It doesn't mean life becomes easy or that we never face difficulties, but it does mean we no longer carry the burden alone. We can rest in the truth that God's plans are always good, even when we don't understand them in the moment. One of the greatest examples of surrender in the Bible is Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. As he faced the reality of the cross, he prayed, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. In that moment, Jesus showed us what true surrender looks like. He didn't resist God's plan. He didn't try to take control. He simply trusted that his Father's will was greater than his immediate struggle. And because of that surrender, salvation was made possible for all of us. What if we approached our lives the same way? What if, instead of holding on to our own plans, we truly believed that God's ways are higher, that he knows the end from the beginning, that even when things don't go according to our expectations, he is still working all things together for our good? Surrender doesn't mean we stop dreaming. It doesn't mean we stop working toward goals, but it does mean we hold those things with open hands, willing to let God lead. Think about the Israelites when they left Egypt. God promised them a land flowing with milk and honey, but instead of trusting him, they kept trying to control the process. They doubted, they complained, and they resisted his timing. And because of that, what should have taken 11 days ended up taking 40 years. How many times do we do the same thing? How often do we delay our own blessings because we refuse to fully surrender and trust that God knows what he's doing? The beautiful thing about surrender is that it's never too late. No matter how long we've held on to control, no matter how many times we've tried to do things our way, God is always ready to take over the moment we give him permission. He doesn't hold our mistakes against us. He doesn't say, well, you should have trusted me sooner. Instead, he simply says, I've been waiting for you to let me lead. If you're in a season where things feel uncertain, if you're struggling with a decision, if you're carrying a burden that feels too heavy, I encourage you to surrender. Lay it at God's feet and trust that he knows what's best. It may not change overnight. It may not look the way you expected, but you can be confident that he is working in ways you can't see. Surrendering to God doesn't mean life will always make sense, but it does mean we don't have to live in constant fear, stress, and anxiety. It means we can wake up each day knowing that no matter what happens, we are in the hands of a loving, faithful God who is always working on our behalf. It means that even in the waiting, even in the unknown, even in the moments where things don't go the way we planned, we can still have peace. So what is God asking you to surrender today? What have you been holding on to that's keeping you from experiencing the fullness of his plan? Because whatever it is, I promise you this, when you let go, when you trust him fully, when you surrender, you'll realize that you were never losing anything. You were gaining everything.